We don't have a tray going, do we?
No.
What do you want me to do with it?
Okay. Display it. You put it on the corner of the table. Okay, well, this handsome guy is a great horned owl. And I bet some of you have heard great horned owls. They go, whoo, 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 whoo. Let's all try that. And then maybe back in the woods you might hear a higher one. Go ahead. And then maybe the lower one would answer back. Go ahead. Okay.
This little owl, he's still growing. He's only 6 months old. He hatched in March, and he was down in a nest in Rhode Island, and he fell out of his nest, and he broke his wing. Someone found him on the ground, unable to fly. They brought him to a rehab center in Rhode Island, and they worked with him for over a month, and that wing just isn't going to heal enough for him to fly. So his right wing, left wing doesn't extend. You can see when Marsha rolls her arm, the bird can't extend his left wing. He is non-flighted, so he gets a handicap ramp like the barred owl, and he'll probably gain a little more weight, but he won't get any bigger in a wingspan. And he's still getting used to this crazy thing we do, but he's doing a good job. He's a really nice-looking great horned owl, a male, and he's a little on the small side. A big female might go 5.5 pounds. Right now he weighs just under 3.
Right, but we don't know why he fell out of the nest. Sometimes great horned owls have 3 young instead of just 2.
I think his sister pushed him out. But it could have been the wind, or he could have just lost his footing and slipped.
Or he might have been the last egg to hatch, so maybe he wasn't getting enough food, and maybe he fell out of the nest. But we're very lucky to have him.
So if you look at his back, I know it's a little hard for some of you to see, but what do you think his back would blend in with in the forest? Trees. What part of the tree? The bark. Now here's the million-dollar question. What kind of tree bark closely matches his back? What do you think? Oak tree? That gets an A. I'm looking for an A+ answer. Oak is good, but there's an even better one. What do you think? Spruce? I give that an A+. What's another conifer tree besides spruce?
How about this big tree right here?
Yeah, what's that tree right there? Pine tree, a white pine tree. And that's often where you'll see great horned owls sleeping, up next to the trunk, up high. And if a red-tailed hawk built a nest in that pine tree, the following spring, or winter actually, a great horned owl might move in and lay its eggs in that nest. They'd lay their eggs in February. They're the first bird to nest in Chelmsford. Imagine this, middle of February, she lays eggs. She might have 2 feet of snow on her back after a blizzard, but she won't leave those eggs uncovered. The male will bring food in and deliver it to her while she incubates the eggs. So this is a male, and a female would look quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, we have 2 other great horned owls. One of them was actually accidentally poisoned, was found down on the ground starving, and had a broken right wing.
Broken right wing, yep.
Right wing. Go ahead.
Okay, and I don't know where you were going with that.
It dropped out.
I know, but I can't read your mind. What were you going to say?
No?
She thinks I can, but I can't.
And so somebody rescued him and brought him to a rehab center, and they realized after they did some blood work that his whole system was flooded with rat poison or mouse poison.
That wasn't this one, though. That was our other
Right.
great horned at home.
Right.
And yeah, it's often fatal for these birds, a long, slow, torturous death if they ingest
So
rodenticides.
he was starving, and he would have died if somebody hadn't rescued him.
So this is often called the tiger of the forest. They can take down larger animals like skunks, woodchucks, small dog, small cat, as well as gray squirrels, ducks, pigeons, smaller owls. I found a pellet from a great horned owl that had fish scales in it. So they eat fish, obviously. And They can also take, a variety of other things like frogs and salamanders and worms and whatever is available they'll take. Probably even insects. I know they will eat snakes too. All right. Any questions in the way back? Yes. Can you say it again really loud? Where do we keep them? Where do we keep these owls? They live with us in their backyard, in our backyard. We have a fenced backyard, and I built individual cages for all of them. So most of them don't live with other owls. They live singly, although the two screech owls that you met live together. They get along. They're both females, and we're able to keep them together. But if we put another owl with the great horn, they probably wouldn't get along. So most of them have their own cage in our backyard.
Right, and great horned owls can live a long time, both in the wild and in captivity. My mom used to do live owl programs with other live birds when I was growing up. She did wildlife rehab, and she and my dad took care of a great horned owl that lived to be 43 and a half years old.
So what Marsha's not telling you is that she was raised by owls. She's the best hooter I know, but I gotta be careful with that word because a certain restaurant chain ruined its use. We gotta be careful what we say about hooter. But anyway, this last owl doesn't really occur here in Chelmsford until usually early November. And even then it would be a rare bird in Chelmsford. You'd see more of them at the coast. They come down from the Arctic. It's the snowy owl. And most of the birds that come into Massachusetts in November and December are younger birds, so they're heavily marked usually. They're quite dark. And
because there's so many of us here, please do not scream when he flaps his wings, okay? Promise?
he will jump off the hand a couple times. Just he's high strung.
Do not scream.
So don't scream, because if you do, it'll freak him out.
He can't get away.
And you may see some feathers blow off. He's still molting. This is Harry Potter's cousin, his owl's cousin. This is Hedwig's cousin. And the snowy owl is just probably the most recognizable owl in the world. Absolutely iconic. This is a male. How old is he, Marcia?
He's 5.5.
And if you're lucky enough to get up to the Arctic in the summer, either northern Canada, northern Alaska, northern Russia, you might hear the hooting of a snowy owl that goes like...
Try that.
And in the winter, they don't usually hoot. They're pretty quiet, although if a peregrine falcon came in on the beach and was harassing him, you might hear him go, kind of like complaining about it with the peregrine. A friend of ours, Norman Smith, who worked as director at Trailside Museum in Milton, he's the guy that goes to Logan Airport every winter and live traps the snowy owls that show up there. And some winters they get a lot of them, and that's not good for airports because, first of all, if they hit a jet, it's going to kill the snowy owl. And worse yet, if the jet ingests the snowy owl into its engines, it could bring down the plane. We all remember what happened on the Hudson River when that jet hit geese. It landed in the river. Luckily, nobody died. But so Norman traps these owls, live traps them at Logan, and moves them either to Plum Island or Duxbury Beach, where he releases them. And one winter, about, 2014-15, he trapped 121 snowy owls at Logan Airport. And in addition, he trapped 40 more outside of the airport. So he had over 160 owls that he live trapped that winter and banded with a numbered bracelet. And he also has seen a snowy owl take down a great blue heron in flight, which is a bird that stands about 3.5 feet tall. And he has a picture of a big female snowy owl eating another snowy owl at Logan Airport. So if you go fly out of Logan, get a window seat in the winter, and you might see an owl sitting on one of the structures around the runways.
Hey, Mark, we have a couple of patient questions back here.
Yes, in the green shirt.
Green shirt.
Nice and loud. Okay, let's be quiet so I can hear his question, please. Will an owl drive another bird out of a tree? Is that the question? Well, owls, when they're hunting, will drive a bird out if the bird sees it coming. And they can sometimes, a snowy owl can chase down a duck in flight and get it. And they can fly probably 60 miles an hour or more. So it's our fastest owl. Yes?
Young lady back there. Go ahead.
How do you tell the difference between a boy and a girl? That's tricky with snowy owls. It's very tricky. If you see a pure white snowy owl, it's probably a male. If you see a very dark snowy owl with lots of barring, it's probably a female. But in between, you get some of these owls that they're not too dark, they're not too light, they're kind of in the middle. That's where it gets very tricky to tell if it's a male or a female. There is a way to do it scientifically. You know, if you see the wing of an outstretched owl, they have primary feathers. The finger-like feathers are called primaries. And then there's a row of feathers called secondaries next on the wing. And the fourth secondary feather, if it's unmarked, it's a male. If it has bars or dark markings that touch the center part of the feather, that's a female. But to see that secondary feather, you have to see the bird in flight, and you maybe want to get a high-speed picture of it to analyze it. So to answer your question, it's tricky a lot of the time to tell if it's a male or female. It's pretty tricky. It's not cut and dry. Yes? What is the attraction at the airport? Well, I don't think it's the food. Actually, it is the food for outside the airport. There's lots of ducks and gulls that they're feeding on in the harbor, and then rats. And then Norman has a list of things they've eaten. It's over 120 species of animals that they've eaten, that he's seen. They've even been seen taking mussels that have washed up on the beach. They can take fish. He's seen them take cats, short-eared owls, barred owls, barn owls, and then geese. They can take down brant, geese, eiders, gulls. They eat a lot of different things. But in the summer, when they're up in the Arctic on their northern nesting grounds, they eat mostly rodents called lemmings. Yeah, lemmings. And they're kind of like a big hamster. That's what they look like. And when there's lots of lemmings, these guys nest. And when lemmings are scarce, these guys won't nest. So year to year, it all depends on how many lemmings are in the area, whether they're going to nest or not.
Now, think about it. In nature, would a snowy owl ever see a penguin?
Noah's right. Who wants to say why Noah's correct? Why wouldn't a snowy owl see a penguin? Penguins are south of the equator, right? Some of them are as far north as the equator in Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands, but you're right, some of them are in Antarctica. They don't make it to the exact South Pole, but they're on the coast of Antarctica. And
would a snowy owl ever see a polar bear?
No.
Because they're both in the Arctic,
Where do
right?
polar bears live?
The far
Northern
north, yeah.
hemisphere, right.
Yeah, so you won't see snowy owls at the North Pole. The North Pole is just a point on the globe in the middle of the ocean. There's no land at the North Pole. So they will sit on sea ice when they're hunting ducks, but when they go to nest, they have to do it on land. They can't nest on ice like a penguin can.
Now, like the screech owls that hatched in captivity, this owl also hatched in captivity at a wildlife park overseas, and we had to import him, and we got him when he was a couple of months old. So in his mind, he doesn't know how to be a wild snowy owl. We call that imprinting. He's imprinted on people.
Okay. Question over there in the Chelmsford shirt. Can you adopt a snowy owl without being a professional? Well, you have to use the bird for education, and you would have to have federal permits to get the bird, and you'd have to build a cage that meets federal guidelines. You would have to be at least 18 years old.
And state permits.
And so there's a lot that goes into it, and you would have to train with someone before you got your education bird. And this snowy owl was not hatched in the U.S. He had to be imported from another country because very few people breed them in the U.S. So there's a lot that goes into it. The best way for you to get experience is to volunteer with a wildlife rehabilitator, where you get to learn how to handle birds and how to care for them. And then as you get older, you could maybe get into it and have birds of prey.
Yeah, you can't have an owl as a pet. In fact, in this country, you can't have any wild animal or bird without a license.
Okay, another question right there in the blue dress. This owl reminds you of Harry Potter's owl? What's his name? Hedwig. Yeah, they're the same type of owl. He looks a lot like Hedwig for sure.
Yep.
I think Hedwig in the movie was 3 different snowy owls. They had like extras that they could rotate. Yes. They are warm. They are panting. Good eye. Yep.
Yep.
He looks like he's smiling, but he's actually hot.
Mark, sorry. Why don't we take 2 more questions?
Okay.
Because we're just about out of time.
And right there, nice and loud. Go ahead. What's your question? I think he's kind of like stage struck here. All right. Pack 107. Did he say it? Owls are soft, yes. Good observation. Okay, Cub Scout Pack 107, what's your question? How can he be what? Did you hear what he said? How can they live down here? Well, they're only here in the winter. In the summer, they're not here when it's hot. Why is he here? Because he's can't be released to the wild. So we give him a big bowl of cold ice water in his cage, and he drinks ice water when it's really hot, and we run a fan if it's super hot, and he doesn't go out and do programs in July and August when it's really hot.
But we thought it would be cool enough today, which it is, that he's not uncomfortable.
He's only mildly stressed. He's not super panting super hard.
And we really want to thank all of you for coming out today, and especially thank the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust and all of the hard work that they do. They do have a donation box in the back on that table.
Collect the books.
Okay, and if any of you that have display copies of Mark's book could hand them forward, we can take them for you. And we have lots of the books for sale. They're $20.
And all proceeds go to the Mouse Fund. I think we have a couple more back here. Thank you. Thanks for coming out.